Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited that Hillary has the opportunity to work with.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that we were presenting that. Did you recommend me to present here? I thought, or was
Nope,
it just a coincidence?
nope, total coincidence.
Yeah, I
Total
forwarded
coincidence.
Hillary the invitation, so she wanted to join and listen in.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, now I'm gonna fix my so that I can blur my background so people won't see my really bad office. I'm gonna go off my camera for a minute until I fix it.
No problem.
Or at least I think I am.
Well, how's everybody doing today? Thursday. The week is moving fast. A lot of fun events coming up.
Almost there. It's been a long week, I know, at Current Hydro.
Does everybody still have nice weather? It's still in Ohio here, like 80 degrees. It's supposed to stay warm for a little bit.
Yeah, it's been beautiful.
I'm ready for fall, so I'm ready for colder. Winter, bring it on.
Well,
Maybe
football
careful what you wish
weather.
for. You'll just pivot from summer to winter and skip fall altogether.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. Yep.
Yeah. Well, the leaves are starting to look pretty in upstate New York here, so
Oh
excited
wow.
about
Yeah,
the upcoming fall hiking in the Adirondacks. Always beautiful.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's the best area to go for fall foliage, in my opinion, is up that way, northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire. It's just
Hampshire?
gorgeous up there. Yeah, I said New Hampshire. I said Vermont, New
Yeah.
Hampshire, and Maine. They're
Yeah,
all.
we're actually going into the White Mountains this weekend, and I was looking at the foliage. You know how they have all these foliage trackers, and we're like a week before when it starts to get into peak season. And I'm like, that's okay. It'll still be pretty.
DC will hit peak foliage while we're at Clean Currents.
Oh, bummer.
Hopefully it'll stick around. Yeah, no, it's still nice and like humid and summerish feeling here. So
I, I'm hoping to get out on a local hike. I hear there's some around Portland, and the foliage should be beautiful there at that time as well. So
yeah, I've heard nothing but phenomenal things about hiking around Portland. And I think I've heard of some that are like accessible via like the local the like light rail or the metro out there. Um so and there's a stop like right at the convention center.
nice.
Do we want to give it another minute or do we want to start now?
I
Or
think we can go
the day
ahead
after?
and get started. And as we kick things off, people can continue to trickle in. Great. So welcome to our September flow call. It's amazing to think we're already in September. And Clean Currents is next month. It's coming up quickly. So a couple of housekeeping items we want to run through. We are recording this call, so please remember to mute yourself and turn your camera off while our presenters are speaking. We will open up for a Q&A after each presentation, so feel free to turn on your camera and mic at that time. If you aren't feeling camera ready, you can put your questions into the chat if you have any, or again, just raise your hand and a moderator will call on you during that period of time. And remember, Clean Currents is coming up quickly. It's next month, October 7th through 10th. I will hear more about all the flow activities from Norbert a bit later in the call, so stick around for that. And spoiler, we do have a special surprise to help you get to the flow networking event at Clean Currents. So stay tuned. Mentorship opportunity. The NHA has received a request from a high school student in Florida seeking a hydro expert for help on a project. This could be a great opportunity for Flow participants to be exposed to being a mentor. So message Katie, Norbert, Catherine, or I, and we'll get your information over to that student, get you two connected. Great. With that, we'll turn it over to Katie.
Yeah, hey everybody. So I am participating in the Mentoring Women in Hydro session at Clean Currents. And right now the session leaders are looking for input from Flow members on either comments or questions that you would like to be addressed during that session. So even if you're not attending Clean Currents, it would be really great to get some feedback on things that if you had a one-on-one with a senior industry leader, like what would you want to know? So you can just put those in the chat. We'll be monitoring kind of throughout the day or throughout the session. And then if you think of some later tonight or tomorrow morning, you can email Catherine. And we're hoping to get those responses to the session leaders by noontime tomorrow. So feel free to say anything in that time frame. I'll kick it back over to you, Camille.
Thanks, Katie. As many of you know, and for those who don't, one of Flow's focuses is connecting Flow members and our participants to various water power industry topics and technologies. And today we are exploring the small hydro sector. Small hydro does not have a set definition, but NHA operates off the parameters that small hydro is under 20 megawatts. Small hydro is an existing section of the hydro fleet, but project and technology developers are pursuing even more small hydro innovations and approaches to both keep the existing small hydro fleet up and running, along with unlocking more small hydro potential. Today, we'll hear from two industry leaders with different approaches in small hydro. First, we will hear from Haley Kessel, who works with Current Hydro on her work in environmental justice in small hydro development. With that, we will turn it over to Haley.
Thank you, Camille. So I just have a very simple PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so with that, I'll just give a brief description as to what Current Hydro is all about. So Current Hydro is building an uncommon hydropower platform. We are reimagining the nation's river system as integral to America's energy transition by creating thriving, clean energy grid assets. The company was founded as it became clear America's net zero greenhouse emissions goal was growing further out of reach with the lack of baseload clean energy in the country and regulatory hurdles that have stalled new hydropower projects significantly for the past 50 plus years. Current Hydro recognized past hydro projects that did not respect riverine ecology or the surrounding environment stained the image of hydro as a whole. With this, the company's mission is to reframe the potential for hydropower with environmentally responsible projects as a driving force for net zero emissions. We collapsed the traditional 10-year timeline down to 4 years from project conception to turbine spinning by not doing business as usual. We first begin with early state and federal and agency and tribal coordination to identify concerns and build trust. We conduct thorough environmental studies for a deep understanding of the riverine habitat and to identify protection measures for sensitive natural resources. And we build relationships with the local anglers and surrounding community. Current Hydro pursues the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission licensing process in parallel with the United States Army Corps of Engineers permitting, and we begin advanced engineering well before the FERC license is issued. And with this assertive and mindful approach, we are looking to rapidly deploy renewable energy generation assets at scale. So that's the standard introduction to Current Hydro here. So just to boil that down a bit, what we do is we use small footprint hydro facilities that put the river first. And this is to minimize our impact on the river and aquatic resources while also maximizing the energy capacity factors. So the hydro projects are modular, and that means we can reuse some of the materials from construction to another project. So we are focused on a tight geography, so then we can really understand the area and the environment and be able to transport these materials with a low impact and low emissions in between project sites during construction. And my job at Current Hydro is to lead the regulatory department. So that means what we're doing in the regulatory department is we're working with the state and federal agencies, and we're working with the local community to hear all concerns, so the projects are developed for everyone, not just for our pocketbooks. So what I want to talk about is a bit of a case study on one of our projects. And from the NHA definition, this is slightly outside of a small hydro. Most of our projects are 19.99 megawatts and less, but this is actually our largest project at 28.5 megawatts. However, we just completed the draft license application to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission this week, so this project is fresh in my head and I can easily speak on it. Here is an overview of the project area. The project is located at an existing Army Corps lock and dam facility on the Ohio River near West Virginia. So you'll see here, these are the spillway gates that the Army Corps releases water through to try and maintain navigation levels. So then the boats and barges can pass through the locks over here safely. And these are the decommissioned lock chambers. So back when this dam was built in 1937, the barges that needed to pass through were much smaller. So these chambers worked, but they needed to expand them for modern day barge size. So in 1993, these locks went out of commission and these new locks began operation. So since 1993, these locks have just been sitting here. And before Current Hydro came into the picture on this project, there was a different developer who tried to license this project area. And their idea was to have the project over on this Ohio shoreline. However, it would have interfered with the Army Corps' operations, and much would have needed to change, really. So it would have affected the Army Corps facility. And also, this area along the Ohio shoreline is an extremely popular fishing area. So these gates here are specifically used. You can even see the white water as it flows through. They are used to attract fish to this area, just to give everyone fishing over here a great fishing experience. So the Army Corps has two missions for this project site. It is navigation for safe passage of barges and boats, and to provide good recreation. So that initial project, it was 50 megawatt project. It was too large, and the locals did not like it. The Army Corps did not like it. So that project, although they did receive their FERC license, it failed because it was not feasible, and they would have never been permitted by the Army Corps, and the public would not have approved of it either. So that project went away, and in 2022, Current Hydro established a preliminary permit. And with conversations with the Army Corps, it was actually the Corps' idea to put hydropower powerhouse in each decommissioned lock chamber. And they thought that was the best place because it would be away from recreation and away from navigation. So it wouldn't affect either Army Corps mission. And by working together with the agency, we're now reusing this decommissioned chamber that otherwise would have just sat here. So we've got concrete walls that are already built, and that means we have to use less concrete. We have walls on both sides built, as well as the channels for the tail race and the intake channel have already been excavated to a degree. So that means our projects are now lower impact. And with having to use less concrete, We know that the concrete and cement industry emits 4 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere a year. So all of this reuse of material is better for air quality at the end of the day. Also, our projects, these are considered historic architecture. And the powerhouses are going to be exactly level with this structure. So when you're over here on the shoreline or over here, you will not necessarily see the powerhouses, and they will blend in with the existing facilities. So that won't affect the aesthetics of the project area, and the local community won't see yet another piece of infrastructure built up in this area. With the level powerhouses, the Army Corps will also be able to walk across their facilities as they already do. And that just goes to show that we can work together with the agencies, and it doesn't need to be a hurdle to do so. And when we do that, project works for everyone, not just for the developer. Let's zoom in a little bit on the project here so we can see. So now you can see that this is where each powerhouse will be in an aerial shot of the facilities here. So really blending in overall, and the only new structures that would be seen is this small substation, which is needed to generate the electricity through the powerhouses along to the transmission line, which is already existing. So this really is actually the only new structure that folks will see when they're looking from the shoreline. So I guess what I want to highlight a little bit, because the topic that I was asked to speak on today was, how does small hydro enhance existing infrastructure? And how are we leveraging new technologies or methods? And the great thing about hydro is it's the oldest form of renewable energy. It's been around since the 1800s. So it's not necessarily that we're using this new amazing technology. We're using tried and true technology with assets that will last for centuries when done properly. What we're really doing to optimize are new methods. So, as I said before in my intro about current hydro, we've had developers who didn't care for the environment come in and stain the image of hydro for everyone. So now we have many environmentalists who don't want hydro, even though they also want clean energy, because they're envisioning large dams. They're envisioning cutting off the river from its source. So we can create hydro in a small footprint that doesn't take up the entire flow of the river, and we're not creating new reservoirs for water either, which end up flooding residents in the area, as well as cutting off fish passage and migration. So by using smaller hydro, we are working with the river, and the methods, they're not complicated. It's simply listening to people, doing proper environmental research, and then using that research to develop and form your project, and how you will actively go through the construction process as well. One of the biggest issues with hydro facilities in general is dissolved oxygen. And there's already a dissolved oxygen issue in these rivers due to the locks and dams. The dissolved oxygen is fundamental for all aquatic life. And when the water passes through the turbines and comes through the tail race, it loses dissolved oxygen. So the water up here has more oxygen than it will down here. And we did an entire water quality study in the year 2023, where we had water quality probes upstream and downstream of this dam. And we found that the water quality, the dissolved oxygen, it really only increases by 0.65 milligrams per liter when it comes over the spillway. And it's actually can be below state thresholds. We have standards that we need to uphold in these rivers, and we've actually committed to a standard that is higher than what the Ohio River requires, which is 5 milligrams per liter, and we've committed to 6.5 milligrams per liter. So a new technology that we're using to do that is we're using a nano bubbler technology where at each of the turbines, there will be 3 turbines in each powerhouse. So each turbine will have a nano bubbler, and that is essentially a air compressor that will inject air and oxygen into the water. So when it comes through the tail race, that oxygenated water is distributed and it comes through here higher than it actually was before it came through the turbines. So, we can use these new technologies to solve age-old problems in the hydro industry. Another thing that we're doing, although actual powerhouse might not necessarily be new technology, is we're using machine learning. So machine learning will be able to optimize how the turbines run, at what hours of the day, and at what flows they generate the most energy. So when the water levels are extremely high and we don't have much change in elevation from the upstream pool to the downstream pool, we will not create as much energy. So the machine learning will be able to sort of turn the turbines off and on and have them run when it's most appropriate. So, we're saving energy from the plant itself running, as well as producing and maximizing our energy output. So the actual technology in there is not new, but we can use things like nano bubblers and machine learning to bring them up to this day, this day and age of new technology compared to what hydro was before. So those are really the innovative technology pieces that we're using at Current Hydro. So, beyond the technology and the clean energy, there is a community that's affected by what we're doing. So all of this sounds great, but how are we working with the community? And this is just a quick map that you can see how we were able to use the US Census data to find out who are the communities. And then we use some tools on the EPA's website to learn more about some of the issues that they face. So this was the area that we analyzed with those online tools. This is the EJ Screen tool on the EPA's website. And here are some findings from the community. So within a 1-mile radius, we had signals of poor air quality, elevated levels of particulate matter, and this area is in the 60th percentile statewide. We have toxic releases to the air, 76th percentile statewide. Poor air quality with wastewater discharge, 97th percentile statewide. And drinking water noncompliance, 61 percentile statewide. And so how does that potentially affect health? Well, the folks in this area have higher air toxic cancer risk, 56th percentile, asthma, 69th percentile, heart disease, 78th percentile, lower life expectancy, 86th percentile, and persons with disabilities, 84th percentile. And, when you look at this data, it's a bit alarming, and we have to remember that this is an area on the Ohio River, and about 5 million people get their drinking water from the Ohio River. It is industry laden in this area. We've got coal country right around this project, and there's coal plants being decommissioned, but the effects are still there in the air and in the water. So, hydro itself is already excellent for the community because of the clean energy that it is going to generate. And then also all of the workers in this area that are being laid off from, coal plants being decommissioned will be able to employ locals here. But, how can we really form our project to try and help those and really not do any more damage than unfortunately they've already been put through with all of this industry that really overlooked their needs. So we are using this information to now formulate how are we going to do construction? What are the logistics? How are we going to work with the community? So some ideas that we're now discussing are we're using all local concrete and even potentially putting a batch plant closer to the site so we're not trucking things back and forth and putting more emissions into the air. And then we are also considering using extra low emission concrete. And in this area where there's a lot of coal, coal creates fly ash and it sort of sits in piles all around this area. And you can put that in the concrete. It's already been discharged from the coal production, so now we can add that into the concrete. So we're using less concrete. And as we heard before, concrete is, it's not very good for the environment with all of the carbon dioxide emissions that it produces a year. So that's a little bit what we can do with air quality, as well as, of course, putting air quality monitors and measures in place. We can use control measures such as, dust control from construction. All of that will sort of spread and go into, the folks' yards who live within the project vicinity. So using extra measures to try and stop any more, air quality issues just simply from our project. Also, with the persons with disabilities, what we know is it's a big fishing area. And some of the current hydro folks that have visited on site, they've seen, people with canes and wheelchairs, and they're out there fishing, of course. But some of their access is not the best on the Ohio shoreline. Just to the side of this picture, there's an ADA accessible pathway down there, but it's very steep and narrow. And then this is some of the best fishing access. But, they didn't make this very handicap accessible. So part of what we are planning to do is to extend the fishing platform here. So, folks who need, who are ADA, they can have the access, safe access. All this rocky hillside is quite dangerous. So we want to, smooth this out and make a nice extended walkway here, and then make this fishing pier, for one, not underwater. That'd be the first part, and smooth it out as well with some nice paved trails. So that's just, one step that we can take when we really analyze who our community is and how they've been affected in the past by industry. And although, yes, we're already doing something good by putting a clean energy asset in, there's a lot more that we can do when we actually learn who the community is and what types of harm have been brought to them in the past. So with all of this, we can really reduce the footprint and the impact of these projects, and we can use old and new technology together to help America with this energy transition, while also helping the community that lives here and looking out for these, these folks are our neighbors at the end of the day, just down the street. And I hope some of them even work for us here at the hydro facility. So how can we work together to build a project that works for everyone? And that's what we're trying to do here at Current Hydro. And I think that's my time. So thank you very much.
Hey, Haley, can I ask a question?
Absolutely. Thank you, Haley. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to open up to questions right now. So please raise your hand or speak up and go ahead. Don't let me
Yeah, I'll speak up.
interrupt.
You mentioned early on like the 19.9 megawatts as a target for you guys. I'm guessing that's a regulatory driver with FERC. Does it provide a cleaner permitting path, or what's the intent on that?
Right. So actually, it's a little bit related to interconnection. And it kind of helps out a little bit with the utility company if you have it under 20 megawatts. The interconnection is a probably the biggest issue that the hydro industry is facing, at least on the developer side. You might get through the regulatory hurdles, but then you're sitting in this queue for years. So it's partially to help a little bit with that. It might shave a few months off, but that's about it. And I think yeah, so we've got 2 projects, 19.99, and then the others are 10 or under. So this was our biggest at 28.5. I'm not sure what type of time savings we'll see on the interconnection issue. It's something that we're going through still on all of our projects.
Gotcha. But your guys' target is kind of the small, under 20 megawatts is kind of your niche you're guys looking to exploit. Okay.
That's generally what we're looking to do here. Small hydro.
Right.
Anton, go ahead.
Hi, Haley. You did a great job of describing all the different challenges that are involved with designing this kind of a project. What do you think the biggest, most difficult challenge to solve through the project was?
Right. Yeah, we're still working through some of these issues. Something that I didn't want to get in too deep, but what we're working on right now is, as I mentioned, the missions of this Army Corps facility are navigations and recreation. And those 2 gates that were the closest to the Ohio shoreline that allow water to come through, the Army Corps is sort of insistent on maintaining a certain flow through those gates. But there's not really any science behind why they've chosen these numbers. And when we've ran our energy generation calculations during low flow periods, as we've experienced this whole summer, and really the past 3 years because of the drought that we've been seeing, and the Ohio River is no exception. They've been seeing these conditions that they had never seen before, that they've seen the past 3 years. So the flows are so low, actually, that we won't have enough water to come to our hydropower powerhouses when they're allowing so much water to pass through that Ohio shoreline. And they tasked us with providing science as to why they should change their operations. And they think this is the best for fishing. So we're trying to do sort of first of its kind study to analyze what is fishing success. And it just started this week, actually, because it's during low flow conditions. So we're tagging a bunch of fish, and we want to learn, how do these predator fish move in the area? Because if the flow that they're offering is more than what really makes sense, we might be able to prove them to change their operations a bit. So we get flow, the fishermen on the Ohio shoreline get flow, and everyone's happy at the end of the day. So we're trying to quantify what is good fishing. And so far what we found is fishing is not good during the day. Over 2 days of electrofishing, they were only able to turn up about 80 fish. And we're trying to get 500 fish in 3 days. So that was our first indicator that, you know, the smart anglers are really going out super early morning. They're going out at night because it's not great fishing during the day. So already with that information, we might be able to try and maximize our energy generation during the day on these during these low flow periods, and shut them off a little bit more at night, because we calculated, and we're going to lose like $1.5 million of revenue a year if they continue with these operations and if we keep having these droughts. So it's a really interesting issue. And, you know, the agencies, they can be a bit difficult to work with. The Corps is certainly notorious for that, but that's not how we're trying to envision the Corps. We view it as a partnership. So we're in constant communication. I just had a meeting with this district yesterday. We do every 2 weeks, and I talked to the hydropower coordinator there multiple times a week. So we're really trying to work closely with these agencies to dissolve these issues before we're at this stalemate where now nobody wins and we're becoming enemies. And I think that's happened in the past. So the Corps is, they're a little bit hurt by all this work they do to try and help developers, and then the project fails, like what had happened before when they wanted too much of the flow. They did all this review and then they had to surrender their license. So they're a little bit tired of developers coming in and then not doing what they said, and they're spending a lot of time on that. So we're trying to be different, and we need to build that trust. So I'd say overall, it's building trust with the agencies is the foundational solution for any of these issues. But just kind of an interesting thing that we're going through right now with RC Bird trying to quantify what is fishing success.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you. It definitely checks out that dealing with other agencies would be the hardest part. On a technical side, I do think it'd be interesting to, give them more flow for fishing at night. Having that flow for hydro during the day would allow you to shave the peaks that we're all aware of. So that could actually work out really well. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Perfect. Anybody
Great,
have any other questions? We'll let one more question go and we'll move on to our next speaker if anybody has it. All righty. Well, Haley, thank you so much. We're going to move on to our next speaker, and that was amazing. Thank you. And if anyone does think of a question at the end, drop it in the chat, or we might have some time to circle back to Haley. But thank you very much, Haley. We really appreciate it.
Great. And a brief intro for Sarah. Sarah Hills Nelson is with Bowersock Mills and Power Company.
Camille, you muted yourself.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
There we go. I had some issues with the mute button. Great. So we are going to hear from Sarah Hills Nelson. She is with Bowersock Mills and Power Company. As Sarah is a jack of all trades, she wears a lot of different hats at her facility and within the small hydro space in general. And following that theme, Sarah is going to talk with us today about the diversity of skills that professionals working in small hydro can obtain through their everyday work at a small hydro facility. So turning it over to Sarah.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Camille. And can you reshare the presentation? And then, oh, great. Okay. Well, I want to thank Haley for setting such a nice, she really set the table here for my discussion. And because really what Current is doing, we did 10 years ago, but, and we were leveraging an existing facility. There are a lot of parallels. So just to give you guys the lay of the land, you can see up in that first upper left-hand corner is our South Powerhouse. That powerhouse was built between 1903 and 1905. It actually replaced the original facility that was built in 1874. And when we were originally generating power at this site, we were actually grinding flour and generating mechanical power. So we had leather belts and steel cables, and we were running power down to downtown Lawrence, and people could hook into that giant Rube Goldberg system into their own shops and use that mechanical force to either drive a dynamo or actually directly drive machines in their facility. So in 1903, that system was taken out by a flood, and the powerhouse you see there in the upper left-hand corner was built between 1903 and 1905. Then the slide immediately across from that, that's our new North Powerhouse. You can see at the end of the Bowersock Dam, that facility was constructed. We started in June of 2011 and finished. We put it online in January of 2013. And we had always known that this facility did not maximize the total amount of water flow that was coming down the Kansas River at this location. In fact, when we were trying to build that new North Powerhouse, we found blueprints at the Army Corps of Engineers that were dated 1924, which had a facility proposed that looked very much like the one that we ultimately ended up building. So to key off also on a couple of other things that Haley talked about, I really appreciate the way that Current is going about this. We did a lot of the similar things in that the very first thing we did was work directly with our community. I didn't call people in DC. I called the King of North Lawrence, whose name is Ted Boyle, because nothing happens unless Ted Boyle says it's going to happen. But then we're working with Sierra Club and Friends of the Caw. And so I think the way that Haley is emphasizing working very early with your NGOs and your community that certainly was beneficial to us. I'm also very proud to say that we were the 15th facility in the nation to be certified as a low impact hydropower plant. And that was really incredibly valuable for us, because the other thing that Haley talked about is the importance of developing those relationships with all the people in the various offices that you're going to need to deal with. And so when we went through that process to get our LEHI certification, that was prior to our expansion. And going through that process, I think, helped them get to know that we were serious about doing things properly. And then when we tried to kick off the North Powerhouse project, I already had all those relationships developed, which was really made our process much easier. So also, you guys asked about those, major issues. When we built that North Powerhouse, exact same thing, very similar issue with interconnection. That is a really serious issue across the nation. Whether you're in the SPP, which we're in, or no matter which region you're in, that interconnection process can be really challenging. And in fact, in our case, we were tiny, and when they do those studies, it turned out that the transmission capacity was exceeded by the tiniest little bit. And the way the SPP does it is you're only responsible for paying for the associated upgrade if the amount that the capacity is exceeded is more than a certain percentage of your total load that you want to put onto the grid. Well, in our case, it was such a small amount of load that we were going to put on the grid that we were the only facility in the study that actually qualified, and they assigned the entire $13 million upgrade to us. Well, that derailed our project by like 3 months, because we had to wait for the SPP to go through that whole process again. So I'm confirming that, yes, that is a very legitimate issue. It ended up putting us into the market at a bad time. It caused all kinds of problems. And that was really placed a bigger financial burden on us. So likewise, our facility is a multiple use facility. That dam that you see right there backs up water for the city of Lawrence water supply. So over 50% of the city of Lawrence's water comes from the Bowersock Mill Pond on a daily basis. And we own the Bowersock Dam, but the city of Lawrence is committed to maintaining the structural integrity of the dam because they depend on it for their water supply. Also, the University of Kansas has a boathouse immediately upstream, so we support that recreation. And we also support the pool for the coal-fired power plant, which is even further upstream. So even though we certainly don't have the bandwidth right now to be retiring that coal-fired power plant. That's going to be a long ball effort, but certainly our dam is also, like the ones that Haley's trying to do, supporting multiple uses, whether it's recreation or water supply, or in their case, barge traffic. So I wanted to focus on Haley did such a good job of, talking about how to leverage existing infrastructure. You can see that we are continuing to do the exact same thing, but the focus of my portion of this is really about creating a business case for small hydropower. And what I want to say is it's definitely challenging. And I'm going to go right to the next slide there, where you can kind of a little bit tongue in cheek here, but if you guys can, there you go. It's like The Sopranos, right? It's like a family affair, but without the guns. Gold lame or the money. That's me cleaning the bathroom here at Bowersock, because really it's my job ranges from working with people at the state, negotiate our power purchase agreements, working on a federal level, but we're doing a little bit of everything. And I don't always clean the bathroom. I have a pretty high tolerance, but it ends up being my job sometimes too. So let's think about small hydro. How can you make small hydro work? And I think one of the things that I see entities do all the time, they get big enough that it's really hard to think flexibly about how to get jobs done. So let's go to the next slide here. I just want to show you the pattern that we developed there. We really try to leverage everyone's skills. And when I say it's like a family business, it's like family farming. I mean, everyone comes home for harvest. And in this case, there's my dad in the 1970s in the upper left-hand corner, raising the flashboards. And then in the middle picture, that's my daughter and me, and she came home from college this summer, and we bring on it's all hands on deck. We painted that cable tower and we actually used rope access to do that. And that saved us. I mean, if we were going to put scaffolding up to do that, it was the scaffolding alone was going to be like $40,000. And we were able to do that job for a fraction of that cost, not only by leveraging ropes access, which people might feel a little bit uncomfortable with, but you really figure out pretty quickly that it's a safe and really economical way to address a lot of issues. And you see that at a lot of hydro facilities. But also, you know, being able to use everybody on our team to do that. You know, my dad's fully engaged. This was a Christmas at the North Powerhouse. Literally one time we had a project we were doing and we ended up spending Christmas Eve in the North Powerhouse. I mean, this is just how it goes with small hydro in my experience. It's not big money, it's slow money, but we pay great wages. We have an incredible staff. They have flex time, and that all hands on deck mentality is really important for us to be able to be successful. So just those other pictures, I mean, that was my husband raising the flashboards in 2003, and I was out there raising the flashboards. Luckily, in our new facility, we don't have to raise the flashboards anymore. So it's a little safe, but less poetic, probably. Okay, so next slide. How, again, focusing on, you know, how do we make this work financially? For me, my job, and anybody that gets involved in small hydro, you need to have a very flexible skill set, and your relationships and the people you call in to help you are incredibly important. So when we issued, we had to issue $25 million of bonds to build that North Powerhouse. Actually, one of my sisters, and both my sisters are quite skilled in finance, and one of them in particular helped us with all of our modeling. But I had to become familiar with, you know, how do these models run, all the legal side of bond issuance. It was a really complicated and very stressful bond issuance, and it all had to do with a lot of the ERA funding and timelines, and it was, you know, I mean, it was a really steep learning curve. Then once we got the plant up and operating, we had a plant manager that really fell apart. And so I had always been the office person and the regulatory person. Very quickly, I realized, yeah, that's not going to work for me to be sitting in the office. So I ended up going out, and, you know, we as a staff have worked together to come up and solve a lot of our problems. We have a very flat hierarchy. We have an issue, and then we all sit down together and think about how are we going to solve that. I'm responsible for HR, staff recruitment and management, IT. I mean, that's one of those things which I do have an IT guy, but the daily issues, I mean, something goes south and it's like, I have to remember exactly how all these systems work. And, you know, if we're down, figuring out what the problem is, who to call, that kind of thing. This is where your key partners in a hydropower, small hydropower facility come in. It's absolutely mission critical. I mean, there's no way that we could afford to keep all the engineering on staff. So we have 2 different engineering firms that we work very closely with, and we outsource certain things to them. Our high voltage IT guy, I mean, it used to be that when you would, at Christmas time, all your vendors would give you gifts. Yeah, those days are over, because those people are so in demand. When they come, I mean, I'm giving them gifts at Christmas, and when they come, I also give them gifts to thank you, because when you're high voltage, when you have a problem, you need to be able to call your person, and they need to be able to come up like J1, as in, you know, 6 minutes ago. So again, it's like having this network of people to help you support the facility, where you're not keeping people on staff, but you have good enough relationships that when you call them, they're going to get there. Same thing with your accountant, your lawyer. I mean, all those people, we have such a small office that I have to have really good relationships with all those people. So time check, it's 2:48, and I was going to do, I'll wrap this up here in just a couple minutes for questions. But my job also involves coordinating with City of Lawrence on dam maintenance. I have to be on top of our water rights, stay totally engaged with state water issues. I serve on a regional advisory committee for the city, or for Lawrence, or for Kansas as a state. And when we're making changes in how water is handled in the state, that's something I have to be on top of. I'm lobbying, doing political engagement, state and national issues. Like I said, all hands on deck for key projects. And then community engagement. I mean, because we have this public-private partnership with the City of Lawrence, it's really important for us to constantly try to make sure the community knows who we are, appreciating what we do. So, you know, today actually was supposed to be our tech ed day, but we bring in all these high school kids from across the county, and they all come in to learn about what are jobs that are available in the trades, because we need to be putting more people to the trades. I'm sure you guys all understand that's a huge issue for hydro. Being on the river, I'm dealing with homeless issues every day. We're fully engaged with our river protection group, trails promotion, and like I said, cleaning the bathroom from time to time. So I absolutely love my job. I'm thrilled for you guys that you're in hydro. There's so many pieces of this that are so rewarding, from the policy piece to the regulatory piece, financing. How do we make small hydro work? I truly believe in the value of small hydro, not just for the value towards the grid, but also, I mean, you can think about where we can spread small hydro out, and what does that mean for jobs, and what does that mean for those communities? So I'll close out saying, if you're someone that likes to stay busy, it's a great career to pursue, and I'm all in for questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Anybody have any questions?
I'm interested, maybe from the group, you guys can tell me, as you're building new projects, I mean, what are we looking at today in terms of like your per megawatt build cost? And how's that comparing to other energy resources out there? Does anyone have current numbers on that?
I do not, but please feel free to speak up if you have any insight on that. Anton, you have any insight? You spoke earlier on your side of things for that.
I have no idea. Sorry.
Okay.
So at current hydro, we're pricing it at about $5 million a megawatt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, from what I hear from some industry experts who are our consultants, that is pretty in line with the hydro market.
Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to know how that compares. And I'm not demanding that you give this, but it is interesting to compare that to wind and to solar, if you happen to know those, you know, because I do, you know, here we see wind, oh, this is so great, it's so cheap, but what we're really seeing in the wind right now in Kansas is like this, the maintenance, it's legit. Like it's a big issue. And solar, I mean, as Haley talked about, we're building facilities that last hundreds of years. So it's the ultimate in sustainability. But what are we going to do with all these solar panels when you know, they work for like 20 years? I mean, they're constantly losing their potential. So worth for you guys to be thinking about how hydro compares to those other renewable resources that we get compared to all the time.
And there's a lot of nasty chemicals in those solar panels, and the the wind panels, the turbine, they can't be recycled. They're fiberglass that ends up in a landfill, and they often break.
Yeah. I mean, for everybody on the call, I mean, it's, for me, I've gone through a long period of this, but I do feel like hydro is getting better attention now, and people are starting to understand that I feel like in many cases, I mean, there's some cases where we shouldn't put hydro in the middle of a salmon run. Okay, yeah, I'm with you. But like we can, you know, the modular facilities that Haley's referencing, what can we do about in conduit hydro? It's a really, to me, it's a really exciting industry to be entering right now. So I'm psyched for you guys.
Thank you for sharing all that, and I completely agree. I think there's a lot of new developments and technology that's coming out, and people are getting more attention on hydro, like you stated, and I completely agree. There's going to be a lot of good developments proceeding forward, and a lot of opportunity. So thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. If anyone else thinks of any questions, go ahead.
I have one more question. Speaking of expanding the industry, do you want to touch on how you and Haley, beyond both being speakers on this call, are connected?
Well, I would love to touch on that. My niece is somewhere on this call, and I can't see her picture right now. But like I said, hydro is a family affair. There she is, Hillary Griggs. So Hillary grew up as a small, I was just putting together pictures for our 150th anniversary party, which we're having the Sunday before Thanksgiving. You're all invited. Whole community's invited. But I have pictures of Hillary as like a tiny person running around this hydropower plant. She's spent a lot of her upbringing in and out here. So I am thrilled that she has the opportunity to enter this industry. And I also feel really good about the fact that, you know, aside from Hillary, we've had some fabulous interns here in the summer that we're now queuing up for new work. And I just think we just have to keep building these young people. So maybe I'll take a little bit of cred for Hillary, but she's pretty dang capable on her own.
So Sarah and I met for the first time at Waterpower Week in DC this March, and that was my first NHA conference because I too am new to the hydro industry. I've been working here for about less than a year. Sarah introduced herself to me and provided a resume for her niece. So it's, you know, NHA and the conferences and Flow, it's a great way to stay connected in the industry. I know I learned a lot, like going to Waterpower Week, and I'm looking forward to Clean Currents. I was actually at the Flow happy hour at Waterpower Week as well. So just a great way to get connected and a lot to learn from the different topics that NHA really does the deep dives into as well, that maybe we don't have the time as developers to get to that. So it's nice to have all that research by NHA.
I'm going to give one short shout out for NHA also. I mean, as I'm looking at these ribbon cutting pictures, you know, we're getting ready for this party, and Jeff Leahy, who worked for NHA at the time, was at our ribbon cutting. And NHA, I mean, we're tiny. NHA supported us all the way through our development. When we were going through the 1603 grant, I mean, they were right there, and Jeff Leahy would connect me to people, figure out, we were the ones that got the 1603 grant to be able to say the building is part of the equipment for a hydropower facility. So, but we couldn't have done that without NHA. And there were many times where we actually couldn't afford to be NHA members for like the 70s and 80s, and we were super poor. And NHA even, I mean, they saw right where we were. They met us where we were with our dues, and I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for NHA. So I'm very grateful.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I hope everything you said about, you know, everyone joining in and being a small team and like everyone's got to take a role. I hope that folks know that NHA is always happy to be, you know, if you're members or interested in membership, NHA is always here to help support your team. And NHA is also a small team. We're a staff of 17. So we get everyone's got to do, like, you know, I run our website here at NHA, but I also help out with Flow, and I also make sure there's half NAF in the fridge. So, you know, we appreciate our small hydro and our large hydro folks. But yeah, I hope everyone knows we're always a good resource, always a resource. And when you call the NHA like generic front desk phone, that's my cell phone, my work cell phone. So a friendly face when you're calling.
Multiple hats.
Yes. That's the fun part of being a small team. Everyone gets to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we got one more question.
And then we'll move on to the last couple updates. So go ahead.
Hey, Sarah, I'm just interested to hear about how, you know, your market is changing with SPP, with all the new renewables and whatnot, how your units are being dispatched differently on the grid.
So we got a 25-year power purchase agreement with our municipal utility over in Wyandotte County, Kansas City Board of Public Utilities. So the way that our power purchase agreement works, we worked it out so it was about 3/5 capacity and 2/5 energy, and it's take or pay. Essentially, everything we produce goes straight into the grid, and KCBPU deals with all that. So I can say that, you know, there are a lot of changes in SPP, but for us at this moment, at least for the remainder of our contract, that's how it's working for us. But I also know, I mean, again, another shout out for Hydro. When we put together our schedule for KCBPU, we can tell them 3 days in advance exactly how much energy we're going to be giving them because we know, I mean, okay, 3 days maybe is sometimes we get a little rainstorm and it throws it off, but that's very different than trying to schedule wind or trying to schedule solar. And we make their lives easier. So, so that's that.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Perfect.
Sarah.
Thank you. All righty. We have a last couple updates real quick. We mentioned before, Flow participants have 50% off discount on Clean Currents registration. So if you're planning on attending this, it's 2.5 weeks away. Please reach out to Kelly or Kate. Their emails will be in the chat. Out at Clean Currents, we're heading to Birdie Time Pub in Portland, Oregon. It'll be our off-site networking event Tuesday, October 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. This venue has a sports simulator, indoor mini golf, and other fun games to play while you're networking with fellow Flow communities and peers. We do have a 40 age cap on the registration online, but since Flow is a community not only for under 40, but early career and young professionals, it's open to new to Waterpower folks. So we want to encourage anybody that doesn't fit under that threshold, is new to Waterpower, to please reach out to Kelly or Kate or any one of the Flow leadership team, and we'll make sure to get them registered and more information on that event. Camille mentioned this earlier, but NHA has set up an Uber promo code that will get you to and from Birdie Pub from the convention center. So we'll have more details on this, but that is something very exciting. I've never heard of that before, but there's an Uber code to get you to the event. And then, yeah, Clean Currents, 2.5 weeks away. I hope to see everybody out there. If you have any questions about anything or need any help getting more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to all of us. But yeah, this was a great call, and we're hopefully looking forward to see all of you in 2.5 weeks. Yeah, real soon. So thank you again, Sarah, and thank you, Haley, and everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. See everyone in Portland.
Thank you, Haley. Bye, team.